Morning everyone, start with a whinge. G'day. Welcome to Nat's Knackershard. I'll be Nat, this won't be my Knackershard, this will be my commute. I don't know why I'm doing a silly voice. It's because it's cold and wet, I think. It just goes, I think the cold and the wetness seeps into my brain. It makes me that little bit more screwed up in the head than I normally am, which is nice. Hope you're well. Welcome back. Say welcome back. It's not like you've been anywhere. You've been wherever you're watching this. If you're anything like me, probably sat on the loo. That's a horrible thought. Yeah, I should have. Well, no, bollocks. I won't apologise for my absence because I've said it many times on this channel, and really, this channel is my hobby. Wrong. No, this channel isn't my hobby. That's kind of getting the wrong point across. My hobby is pissing around with bikes. I happen to upload my hobby. Oh shit, can't see. Fucking up. Too slow. Too wet. I'm too warm. Yeah, my hobby is messing around with bikes in my shed. I am the archetypal tit in a shed. Like any hobby, there's times when everything's a bit busy and you don't get the opportunity to do your hobby. And it doesn't mean that I'm not uploading because I'm doing stuff. I'm actually just not. I'm not hobbying because I don't have time. So I put a random upload picture on my channel. I think they call it a community post. Yeah, okay. It's a picture rather than a video saying guess where I am, and I put a picture of a very cool bike on it, and that very cool bike was a V1000, a Britain EN, not ON, or AN, Britain AI. Fucking hell, my brain's not working this morning. BRITTEN, Britain, V1000, and basically it's a hand-built superbike off of the 90s, and as we all know, all the best things come from the 90s. All the best music was from the 90s. Well, no, best music was from the 80s, but you know, the 90s created some really quite fucking astounding bikes. Now, thanks to Sadiq Khan and the ULEZ zone, you can't ride any of them in London without paying £12.50 a day, which is unfortunate, but there's some awesome bikes. And that was in a museum that I visited, and that museum that I visited was in Wellington in New Zealand, which I got a funky little work trip. Now, they come round once every blue moon, they seem to have done, and I got invited to and dragged along, and it was awesome. I happened to bump into an old mate of mine who's resettled out there. His missus is a Kiwi. He saw that I was out there, he heard that I was out there, and I went round his house for dinner one evening, which was phenomenal. But anyway, that's nothing to do with bikes. That's kind of an excuse as to why I was away. The bike related bit is I think interesting. So while I was out there was a demonstration over a law change, particularly to do with the indigenous people, the Maoris, and I'm not going to go into it because I don't understand it enough to do it justice, but essentially They've had a change of government from sort of centre left to centre right, and they're changing some of the centre right are changing some of the more lefty liberal rules that the lefties put in. I'm not going to comment on the validity of it, yada yada yada, but it's complex for a outsider to follow, but essentially it does have an impact on particularly the indigenous people. So there was a demonstration while I was there. It was all very friendly, it's by demonstration, we're not talking Southport riots, we're talking lots and lots and lots of people, families, children, dogs, etc. It had more of a festival feel, to be brutally honest, and because it was so peaceful, I took a stroll through it when I was on a lunch break, and chatted to a few people. I tried to get a handle on what the demonstration was about, but I found people were quite passionate in their beliefs, so I stopped asking, because I didn't want to rile people up. That wasn't the point. I was just interested. So just had a wander around. But what I did find was a biker group that were there with their bikes, and I asked if I could take a photo, because bikes are like children. I tend to find that you shouldn't just take photos of somebody else's without asking. Not that I particularly ask to take pictures of other people's children, but you know what I'm saying. Nor do I take photos of other people. God, that sounded awful. Anyway, I asked, and they went, yeah, go for it. And I'll drop the photo one, and I'll drop a couple of photos on. But looked quite cool. Mostly Harleys, which not really my thing, but I've got to admit they still do look quite cool. A few Indian chiefs and bits and pieces like that kicking around, but it was quite good. Anyway, I started chatting to the guys, as you do, because I'm a quite outgoing, chatty type chap. All of the guys were, for one, Maoris or South Pacific people. For two, massive. I'm talking big guys, and I don't mean big as in fat. I mean big as in these guys would stop that transit van, probably pick it up like a Tonka toy, turn it around and send it the other way. They were big units. It was quite funny. Anyway, I started chatting to them, and the bit that concerned them was something that I found, and I'll see if I can find a link to one of the many stories that was going on about it, was biker gangs in New Zealand. So builders biker gangs, we would probably call them in the UK as motorcycle clubs. Now there's some culturalisms that I don't get, so maybe motorcycle clubs are more gang related in New Zealand. Maybe it is more gangs and violence and illegality, but we would call them motorcycle clubs in the UK. Now I've flirted with the idea of joining a club in the UK, but I just don't have time. They take a fair amount of commitment to do properly, and to try and get the patch, and I don't have time for that sort of degree of commitment. Now the difference in the UK is that motorcycle clubs tend to be quite a positive thing. There aren't many, well, 1%ers, therefore 1 in 100, because when you start looking at Hell's Angels and some various more criminally aligned gangs or clubs, I should say, but essentially certainly the one that I was looking at, and I won't give details on here, but certainly the one I was looking at does a lot of great work for charity, mate, and God, it's busy this morning. So I couldn't, I was struggling to draw a UK parallel with what they were saying, but anyway, motorcycle gangs in New Zealand are now illegal, as at I think about 3 or 4 days ago. You can be arrested, fined and jailed for wearing a patch, either on your person or on your bike. Tattoos were an interesting, and a couple of bits of red. Some said yes, some said no. And I know that might sound a bit weird to Brits, but Kiwis, through the Maori heritage, if nothing else, everyone's got fucking tattoos, it seemed, including some facial tattoos, and females with the sort of like the, I'm going to upset Kiwis, I do apologise, but like the goatee tattoo, so under the mouth onto the chin. I don't know what it's called. I'm culturally illiterate, but anyway, yeah, you can. Patches are no longer legal, and you can be arrested for having them. The really scary thing, considering that New Zealand is a liberal democracy. Liberal, I sound very political. For what do I mean by that? A lot like us, I suppose. A lot like Britain, a lot like the UK, a lot like the US, and most of Europe. But once you've been arrested for it and it's on your record, your house can be searched in future dates to make sure that you haven't just stashed it somewhere. I find that incredible, absolutely incredible. Talk about impingement on civil liberties. But hey, yeah, I'm not big into bike culture. I'm kind of anti it. I don't quite get the whole, free your spirit, ride a bike, call everyone brother that also happens to own a motorcycle. I think that's kind of bollocks, to be brutally honest. It might have been a thing once. Well, it's in neutral then. It might have been a thing once. I really don't think it is anymore. I think it's a bit of a throwback. It's a bit of a sort of a 60s and 70s throwback. I don't think that's the case anymore. I certainly wouldn't assume that somebody's my brother because they happen to also be on a two-wheeled vehicle. I kind of don't see the rationale behind it, but yeah, it's an interesting. But that aside, you do have things in common with people on bikes. I.e., when it rains, your crotch gets wet. That sort of thing. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're blood brothers. But it does mean that you tend to find stuff about bikes around the world of interest, because it has a degree of relevance to you. Why? Because you kind of look at it and go, could that happen over here? Now, I don't think it could or would. I don't think our motorcycle clubs, even to the point where you say motorcycle club before you say motorcycle gang, it's more in the vernacular, if you like. Ours don't tend to cause any problems, if for no other reason that bikers are such a minority that even if we all clubbed together, we couldn't fill Wembley Stadium type thing. But yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. Other stuff that's going on in this country, in my world, is it's currently midweek. This weekend I get the new house, the one over the road. What are you honking at, you bellend? Yeah, so that means this weekend could be move weekend. Well, actually it's that weekend and the weekend after, and I do have removals people come in over 2 days, and we're not going to pack things up in boxes and chuck them in a van. We're literally going to pull drawers out, chest of drawers, pull the drawers out, move the actual unit, move the drawers, stuff them back in the other side, so it's not a full pack and go type thing, because there's no point. But that's weekend after next. This weekend will be kind of preliminary stuff, which is probably going to include moving my knackers yard over the road. I've done some pre-work because, as you know, I've had the key for a little while, because I knew the dude that lived in there beforehand, and he lobbed me a copy, which was very nice of him. So I have done some shelving and bits and pieces. I've done a bit more that I haven't filmed. I did film the making shelves out of pallets. I've got a couple of like cheap metal units in there now. I've got in there and distributed power a little bit wider as well. So in my current garage I only have power delivered to the left hand side, which I'm not complaining about. It's not, you know, lots of people don't have power in their garage at all. But I've just run a spur over the roof, so I've now got power on the left and the right, because there's a real pain in the arse in my current garage is having to run everything off essentially 2 sockets, yeah, so I thought while it was empty I'll do that. What I also want to do at some point is play around with the lighting, because the lighting's not enough where it is. Oh my god, Waddle Boy. Quite a nice bike, but you really seem to be happy about riding it. Okay. I do not waddle with both feet when I'm slow speed filtering. For one, I prefer to balance. For two, if I'm going so slow that I can't, or it's a gap that I need to guide myself around, I use one foot down, and it tends to be my right foot. I don't really know why. It's just more comfortable that way. And I've got all the braking I need for that on my front brake. God, this is crap. Right, I might drop you back in later to carry on chat. If I don't, then just assume that this is all more of the same all the way in. And I'll catch you later. Ta-da! Ooh, what's that? Fording. No, he's stuck. That's funnier than it should be. Oh, you're all fucked.